This is the Anthrobiology Podcast, hosted by me, Gabby LaPera. Every 2 weeks, I interview a biological anthropologist about what makes us, us. Hey there, everyone. It's Gabby LaPera. I'm in my apartment in San Francisco. And on the show this week, I have Dr. Katharine Jack of Tulane University in New Orleans. She very graciously allowed me to interview her via Skype when our original in-person interview fell through because of the coronavirus. Thank you, Dr. Jack. I really appreciate it. On the show, Dr. Jack discusses capuchin monkeys in great detail because that's her area of research, including primate reproductive strategies, which are very, very interesting, but could be a slightly charged subject for some, especially because we talk a lot about infanticide in this episode. If you're okay with that, then full steam ahead. The other stuff that we talk about keystone individuals, and we also talk a lot about kind of the process of doing science, or at least the way that Dr. Jack does it, which involves a lot of collaboration and a lot of patience, which makes me feel like more of us should be like Dr. Jack. The last thing that I wanted to say about this episode is that I actually made a mistake in the middle of the show. I talk about an incident where a chimpanzee attacked a woman, and I could have sworn that this happened in the 1990s, but apparently it didn't. It happened in 2009. I thought the reason I was so traumatized by it was because I was a child, but I was an adult in college when this happened. I think it just confirmed all of my inherent biases about chimpanzees and all of my deep-seated fears. I'm really scared of chimps. I don't know why. Anyway, if you want to know more about that particular incident, if you Google Travis the chimpanzee, it'll definitely show up. While we were talking about it, I think that Dr. Jack thought that I was referring to a separate incident that actually happened in 2005. And that chimpanzee, if you want to know more about that particular attack, then you should Google Mo the chimp. In this case, Mo actually wasn't the aggressor. It was two other chimps that were at the sanctuary. Overall, she does bring up a very good point, which is that chimpanzees are not domesticated animals and should not be in the home. And I'm only bringing that particular point up because I feel like Tiger King is everywhere right now. And I just want to remind people that wild animals are wild animals and you shouldn't have them in your home. Anyway, I hope everyone out there is staying healthy and staying safe. If you have any questions for me, feel free to shoot me an email at gabby.lapera@anthrobiology.com. And before I forget, thank you to the person who left me a review on iTunes. I actually think I might know who you are. And if you are who I think you are, I want to thank you very much for letting your daughter come to California and be friends with me. I really, really appreciate it. She's very special and I like her a lot. And it seems like I'd probably like you too. Anyway, that's all. And I hope everyone enjoys the show. Hello, everyone. This is Gabby LaPera. Joining me from her office in Tulane in New Orleans is Dr. Jack. How are you?
Hi, I'm fine, Gabby. Thanks. How are you?
I am good. I am very excited to talk to you. You are the first primatologist that we've had on the show. I feel like I've done a very good job of showing people different specialties like bioarchaeology and paleoanthropology and forensics and all of that, but I haven't talked to a primatologist, and that's kind of like a core component of biological anthropology.
Well, I'm glad to be your first primatologist interview.
So can you tell people a little bit about what you do and what a primatologist is?
Sure. Yeah. A primatologist is very simply someone who studies non-human primates. And I put that qualifier on there, non-human primates, because of course humans are primates as well. But primatologists in particular do not generally study humans, not directly anyway. A lot of what we do study helps us better understand human behavior and human evolution, but our focus is purely on living non-human primates, so monkeys, apes, and the lemurs.
So I actually wanted to ask about something that you said. You said that you don't directly study humans. Can you dig into that a little bit more? How is studying something like a lemur or a capuchin monkey. How does that help you understand humans better?
So there's a couple approaches. When primatology was first really introduced into anthropology in, probably the 1950s, we really did it with the intent of understanding more about human evolution. So it was originally thought if we studied, say, a species like baboons that lived on the savannah, where early humans were thought to have first evolved, that we would better able to understand how humans behaved and lived in a similar environment. And we also looked at chimpanzees because they're the most closely related to us genetically to see what, I guess, a non-human primate in a more natural setting, the most human-like of primates, and how they behaved and how that might help us understand our own evolution and capabilities.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think that it's at the same time a very intuitive approach and almost a non-intuitive approach. I think just depending on how much you know about evolution.
Exactly. Yeah, and I mean, I study capuchins, or someone who studies lemurs, which are much more distantly related to humans. And I get asked all the time, well, why are you studying those? Why bother? What do we need to know about capuchin behavior? And there are a lot of answers we can give to that question. First of all, we can just study them because they're really interesting animals. The species that I study is also very intelligent. So seeing how they solve ecological problems and how they live, how do they survive? So we can just study them because they're interesting in and of themselves. And every little bit of information we can gather about animal behavior will inevitably help us understand the world around us. Maybe not our own behavior directly, but a lot of times we do gain some insights into human behavior, what's unique with humans, what's not, what are animal universals, primate universals, different approaches like that.
Right. And then the other version of that is what you were talking about before as a potential proxy for very, very, very early human ancestors.
Yeah.
So can you describe a capuchin monkey to me?
I sure can. Yeah, there are actually quite a few different species of capuchins, but the one I study is in Costa Rica, but they range as far north as Guatemala and as far south as northern Colombia. And they are black and white monkeys. They're actually called capuchin monkeys. They were named because they had some sort of resemblance to the Capuchin monks in Italy, because the monks wore black robes and they had a bald head. And so these monkeys have a white cap on their head and that's black fur around their face. And then their face is white and just black and white all over their body. And they're about the size of a house cat.
Oh, okay. So I'm not gonna lie. I'm actually a little bit scared of monkeys. I think that I don't know if you remember. There was this woman in Connecticut who had a chimp and he ripped her face off, and she was the first successful face transplant survivor.
Mm-hmm.
I think that like really hit me at a very seminal time in my youth, that story. I was like maybe like 8 or so. And I think that it just really stuck with me. So I think it's so interesting and like weirdly brave what you do studying monkeys.
Well, so I think if you put into context the situation with that chimpanzee, that it was raised as a baby by that woman, and then that woman eventually couldn't take care of it because it's a wild animal. They're not domesticated. They shouldn't be kept as pets. And she gave it to a facility. And then when she went to visit the chimpanzee, I guess it recognized her and obviously wasn't very happy to see her. I'm not saying that justifies the action that took place, but yeah, I mean, that's not going to happen in the wild. Even if you happened upon a group of chimpanzees that were completely unhabituated, so not used to seeing humans, they are not going to attack you. They're going to be much more afraid of you than you should be of them. The capuchins that I study, one of my first introductions to them actually was in a national park called Manuel Antonio in Costa Rica. And the monkeys there, they've kind of gone a little, well, they're wild, but they've gotten too used to humans. So they will steal people's food. And my husband and I were walking up this trail, and these two tiny blonde people I think they were from Denmark. They were terrified running down the trail towards us. And they're like, run for your life. there's a monkey chasing us. And I'd studied monkeys long enough to know that this wasn't quite right. So, and then of course, this male capuchin he was really beat up looking. He'd probably been fighting a lot because that's what male capuchins look like. And he was running after them and he just stopped right in front of us. And when you know enough about primate behavior, if you run, they're going to chase you. But if you hold your ground, and that's what we did, and he kind of threatened us, and then he was like, "Oh, this is having no reaction," and he just walked away. So they can be terrifying, I guess, but it's like imagine a house cat with a really big brain and large teeth and prehensile hands chasing you. I guess that would be a little scary, actually.
Now that you mention it, yeah, it's pretty scary.
Yeah.
No, I feel like this might be the most useful episode to date in terms of takeaway information for people. Like they'll go into the forest and they'll know what to do if they encounter a capuchin.
Don't run away. Yeah.
So you mentioned doing field work. What is that like for you? What is like a typical day when you're out studying capuchins?
So yeah, I work in a national park in Costa Rica. It's called Santa Rosa National Park, and it's the oldest park in Costa Rica. So it's a really special place, particularly for Costa Rican people. It has a big symbolic meaning to them because there was a very large battle of independence fought in this national park. So we get a lot of Costa Rican tourists, not a lot of foreign tourists, which is fine. So in this park, we've been studying, not me personally, but my colleagues and I have been studying the monkeys since 1983. And this actually makes it one of the longest term studies of neotropical primates for certain. But there are only about 10 studies that have been going on longer than 30 years. And this just enables us to get a really different glimpse of their lives because we're now studying generations.
About how long does a capuchin live?
So our oldest male to date is now 27 years old. So he's been studied from birth to 27. He's still alive and kicking. And I think the oldest female we've tracked went to 25 years. But we still have, I think she's still alive as well. They happen to be brother and sister too, which is kind of interesting. They're in two different groups now. But it makes me wonder if maybe there's some longevity in that family lineage.
Mm-hmm. So you've been studying, well, you and your colleagues have been conducting this study since 1983.
Right.
What kind of insights have you been able to glean from that?
In order to answer a lot of biological questions in terms of how they impact, how, say, different behaviors or different ecological patterns impact individual fitness, which means reproductive success and survival, we need to have generational data. So we need to know how many offspring a particular male or female had. And it's really hard to do that with primates because they live for such a long time. And when we're talking about evolutionary theory and fitness, we really need generations of data. So not only how many offspring you have that survive, but how many of them have offspring that survive, and so on and so on. So we're only beginning to be able to answer questions like that. So it wasn't until, trying to remember, so I first started collecting genetic data on paternity, so being able to track male reproductive success in 1999 and 2000. I know that's a long time ago today, but that was after almost 20 years of study, or over 20 years of study. So it does take a long time for that type of information to come out. So we didn't even know until that probably 2001 and some more recent publications that we've had as well, that alpha males in our group sire almost all of the offspring. Once they've been in a group a long time, their daughters start maturing, then some of the other males in the group reproduce. But it took us over a decade to learn that information. Other things like I study male life histories. That's my main focus, is male life histories and reproductive strategies. And we didn't even discover interesting facts about male dispersal patterns. So males move between groups. And it took us about 12 or 15 years of data collection to realize that males are actually traveling from groups together, like in pairs or in groups of 4 or 5 individuals, and that they maintain these relationships, a lot of them throughout their lives, which is something that we know happens in a few species of primate, but it seems to be a pretty rare thing for males to be able to maintain friendships from group to group.
That is so interesting. And because before, really like the mid 2000s, genetic testing was difficult and expensive, and it's still pretty expensive, not nearly as expensive as it used to be. It's amazing like what the advances in technology could do. Sorry, circling back to the previous question, when you're in the field, what are you doing exactly? Like, are you observing them? Are you catching and releasing them? I'm assuming you must because you have genetic data, but how does that work for you?
So our study is completely hands off. We don't do any capturing. We have 5 study groups right now. We know each individual in the group. So say if I'm just going to Santa Rosa to study these monkeys for the first time, so it's one of my graduate students, what we do is we have a team of people who are working for us all the time. We have 2 Costa Rican assistants that have been with the project for many years, and they know every monkey in the group, and a lot of the senior researchers do as well. But we really rely on them to help train our students on IDs, so we can tell every single capuchin in a group apart from another one. So we can look at their faces, even though they all have white faces and dark eyes and black and white hair. There are different features we can go on to tell them apart. Like a male might have a big scar under one eye, or a freckle on his cheek, or a female. When females get old, they get big bushy brows. So at first, we kind of rely on these little individual kind of idiosyncrasies or distinctive features. But after a while, they start to look as different to us as humans do. Not quite as easy as telling humans apart, but we can tell them apart fairly easily. So when we're in the field, we usually get up at about 4:30 in the morning, way before the sun gets up, so that we can go to where the monkeys are sleeping. And we position ourselves close to under the tree, not directly under the tree, because they like to go to the bathroom as soon as they wake up.
Very wise.
You only do that once, only make that mistake once. So, and once they wake up, then we follow them throughout the day. We usually keep a fairly large distance from them, like usually 5 meters, often a lot more. They are arboreal primates, so they're mostly in the trees, but they do come down to the ground. They'll come down and play on the ground and forage on the ground. They come down to drink from streams and just to get various foods and things like that. So we don't ever touch them, interact with them, feed them. It's all totally non-invasive research. So then you're wondering, how do we get the genetics? And I'm going to tell you about the magical world of monkey poop.
Ooh.
Yeah. You can get so much information from a fecal sample from a monkey. I never thought in a million years, if somebody told me when I was starting grad school that I would be collecting thousands and thousands of fecal samples, I wouldn't have ever believed it, but we do. And from those fecal samples, we can use them for genetics. You can extract very small pieces of DNA, and those can then be amplified in the lab, and we can use those to get individual IDs from. We can then do paternity, parentage, kinship studies from that. I also collect a lot of fecal samples for hormone analyses. So we can tell male testosterone levels and cortisol levels. We can tell if a female is cycling, so if she is about to ovulate or if she has ovulated, if she's pregnant. So we can gather all that biological data from feces. You can also do a lot of ecological studies like seed dispersal and things like that, but that's not my main area of focus.
Yeah, I think this is great. Most of my experience with fecal samples has actually been with coprolites, which are fossilized pieces of poop.
Yeah.
So I never really thought about collecting fresh, but I guess you could get a lot more information from it.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. When we first started to do the genetics, we were actually getting hair samples from the monkeys. And so we simultaneously collected hair and fecal samples, and it ended up that the fecal samples had a much clearer DNA signal than the hair. And it's way easier to collect a fecal sample than a hair sample.
Yeah, I'm trying to imagine how you'd go about collecting a hair sample without getting near a monkey.
We actually had to use like a blow dart but instead of a pointy tip, we had a sticky, like a duct tape essentially on the end of the dart. So it's again a skill I never thought I'd have to have, but I was very good at aiming it so it would just kind of hit them right in the kind of haunches, and it would hit them and bounce off, and the monkey would just kind of look around like something had kind of stung it, and then go about doing whatever it was doing before. But fecal samples are much easier.
No,
they don't pay too much attention.
That's an incredible skill. I'm so sorry. Are you going to teach your children how to blow dart monkeys? I hope you are.
I don't know.
I feel like they would be, I mean, maybe this isn't a skill to teach children because I feel like they would use it for evil.
Yeah.
But wow, that's so cool. Can you tell me a little bit about why you personally are interested in primatology and capuchins? Like, how did you end up here to begin with?
Sure. It's kind of, I was thinking about this because you gave me this question in advance to think about. And I have thought about it before. And when I went to university, I didn't plan to study primates. I actually wanted to do an MD, of course, but in psychology. I was really interested in psychology. And I was trying to figure out, why was I so interested in psychology? And I think I've always had a fascination with animals and animal behavior. I was one of those kids that pulled the legs off of daddy long legs and watched them wiggle and wonder why that happened. But when I got into the psychology class, I was pretty, I don't know how to say this politely, just kind of bored, because the paradigm at the time was it's Skinner, right? It was, all animals can be taught this stimulus response, right? So that Pavlovian response and the Skinner boxes, and didn't interest me at all. And this was really before like cognitive evolutionary psychology had taken off. And I happened to take an anthropology class. I didn't even know what anthropology was. My roommate, I needed a class, and she said, "Oh, take anthropology. It's so interesting." And I did. And I really fell in love with anthropology as a whole. I don't think it was a full year class. I really didn't learn much about primates in that class. I had a fantastic cultural anthropologist who taught the class. And I was very interested after that in archaeology. And I took archaeology classes and also some biological anthropology classes at the same time. And as soon as I saw a film of Stuart and Jean Altman, who are iconic primatologists in our field, that was a video of them watching wild baboons. And I was like, oh my gosh, that looks so much more interesting than digging up bison bones and arrowheads, because that was the archaeology where I was growing up. No offense to people who like doing that, but I just wanted to be outside and travel and see living, moving animals. So that was it. That film just sealed the deal for me.
I think that's actually a really lovely story. And I think that is actually pretty typical for how a lot of people get into anthropology. I feel like there's not very many high school students who are like, you know what I want to be when I grow up? An anthropologist.
Yeah.
So I think that I don't know, it's just a typical but wonderful story, especially because you found a lot of success.
I've been very, very fortunate because I've had fantastic mentors throughout my career, and I have an excellent team of people that I work with. And that's something that I think really is very common in primatology. I find primatologists, unlike a lot of sciences, we're not super competitive. We don't like guard our data. We like to share data and put together so that we can understand more about a number of different primate species rather than just our own. And that's something that really differs, I think, how primatologists really differ from, say, a biologist who's studying birds, or like, why am I in anthropology versus biology? And I always feel the approach that we have is a very anthropological one, in that rather than going and trying to understand another culture, we're trying to understand another species. But primatologists tend to be very species driven, unlike biologists tend to be more question driven, right? They'll have a certain area of expertise or question, and then they'll study that in a number of different species. Whereas primatologists tend to focus on a certain primate species and then try and learn as much as possible about that species. And I don't know if you understand the subtle difference there, but it is in my mind, a big difference. And the main reason for that is that our species live such a long time. So it takes us a long time to understand them. And once you invest that time and effort into habituating a group and learning them, you can't just up and leave and then go do that somewhere else.
Yeah, I think that there's a few different things to tease out there. One, I think, is that there is a breadth to studying anthropology that you don't necessarily get in other disciplines. I feel like there are other fields, people really prioritize depth. And that's not to say that anthropologists don't know a lot about what they know about. It's just that you also are, I think, as a natural byproduct of the way that you're taught, you're curious about how what you're learning relates to others. You know what I mean? And then I think with biology, like you were saying, like with really short-lived species, a lot of evolutionary research has been done on very short-lived species because it's easy to have like 15 generations of mice and see the change over the course of a year.
Mm-hmm.
I actually don't know how fast mice breed, but I assume that it's very quickly. And that's, like you said, that's not something that you can do in anthropology. So it's a very different relationship with your research subjects.
Yeah.
So I actually wanted to also talk to you about a paper that you wrote about keystone individuals. Can you tell me what a keystone individual is?
Yeah, so it's a concept that's related to the keystone species concept, which is that in an ecosystem, you will have a species, say a single species, that has a very complex relationship with the entire ecosystem. And if something happens to that species, the whole ecosystem is impacted. So we might say like a ficus tree, which is very important in the forest that I work in. If all of those ficus trees became extinct for whatever reason, this is totally hypothetical, then that would have a huge impact on all of the other species in the forest that rely on that, like the three monkey species where I work, a lot of the bird community, a lot of the forest floor dwelling species that also eat those fruits. So that's an example of a keystone species. So that concept has also been taken and applied to understanding individual roles within a group. And we determined with our long-term data on the capuchins that alpha males really fit this idea of a keystone individual in that they are having a huge impact on their groups. So there's only one alpha male in the group, so there's a limited number of alpha males. And when he's in that group, he's having a huge impact on the group. And what I mean by that is, okay, he's siring all the offspring. So he's impacting female reproductive success. He's impacting the reproduction of other males that are in that group. And if something happens to that male and he's removed, there's a whole series of events that happen after that. And I don't know if you want me to get into detail.
Yeah, I would love that. What happens when you remove a keystone individual from a group?
What usually happens is if you take an alpha male out, we have to have a replacement. A new alpha male has to come in. And that can either be a male that's present in that group. Actually, let's back up a second. I'm gonna actually give you a real example, something that happened in our study population last year. It's a very sad story, but I'm going to give it to you anyway. So we have one of our study groups. Part of their range is in the central administrative area of the park, where there's a lot of humans. It's where our research station is. A lot of other park personnel have houses there. There's a dining hall. And there's electricity going to this area. And our alpha male, whose name was Nutmeg, he was electrocuted and died. So he got on a transformer on the electric line and died from his wounds. And after that happened, within about a week, one of the subordinate males in the group became alpha. So he started acting like alpha. The females and the infants all vocalize to the alpha male in a certain way. And they also start to beef up. Their testosterone goes way up and they start to get bigger and bigger as a result of that. And whenever we have an alpha male replacement, either if it's from a male inside the group or other males come from other groups, it always coincides with a period of infant killing. So we call that infanticide, where this male kills all or most of the infants under 1 year of age. And you would think it would stop, right? So he's kills all these infants and then it would stop. But what we've actually found is that even females who were pregnant at the time that the alpha male disappeared or died or whatever happened, their gestation is 5 months. So if she has an infant, say 4 months after that alpha male disappeared, that infant's also killed, which is incredible to me, that because they obviously, we don't know, maybe they understand how reproduction works, but we think there's some sort of odor recognition involved. But by 4 months, the group's totally settled down. Everybody's kind of, back to normal, except there aren't any babies in the group.
And that's not an uncommon reproductive strategy in primates, correct? In non-human primates?
No, it happens in quite a few different species, and it's usually in species where reproduction is limited to just a few males, 1 or 2 males in a group, and where you have these replacements of alpha males. It happens in gorillas. If the silverback gorilla dies or is overthrown, the new male will kill the baby gorillas as well. It does happen in quite a few different species. It's also very common in lions as well, and a number of other mammalian species. So, I just wanted to say, as a result of that male being electrocuted, we had 6 babies also die. So it was, when you take out one individual and it has that huge impact on the group size and structure, you have new males come in, some males will leave. So it really does have an impact on them. And we compared the impact of losing a subordinate male, and there's really no impact. So if a subordinate male, say, just dispersed and moved to another group, infant deaths do not occur. So they really have very little impact. So that just kind of demonstrates how the alpha males have a much greater impact on group success than the subordinate.
Which is why they're the keystone individual.
Exactly.
This is really, really interesting. I also feel like I've taken up a lot of your time. I'm looking at my clock, but I wanted to let listeners know that if you have any questions about this episode, feel free to send them to me, and maybe we can figure out a way for Dr. Jack to answer them at some point in the future. I don't know if you would be up for that.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'd be happy to do so.
Yeah, I feel like this is a really interesting interview and very, very different from anything else that I've done before. So I would love to have you back on. I think you're great.
Well, thank you. I'd be happy to come back.
All right. Well, thank you. Okay. So the final part of the interview, I ask everyone the same 3 questions.
Okay.
And the first question is, if someone wanted to learn more about what you do, where would be a good place for them to start? Like, is there an article or a book or a website or something that they could read to start getting their brain around what primatology is, or even what more specifically what you do, like studying capuchins?
Yeah, so I do have a website, and most of my publications are on there, so they can look at those. There's also a fantastic book written by Karen Stryer. I think it's called Primate Ethnographies. And it's stories written by, I think there are 25 or 30 different primatologists that have written these very accessible stories about what it's like to do field work and what their careers have been like studying various species. I do not have a chapter in there, but my mentor and collaborator, Linda Fedigan, has a chapter in there. So there's a lot about capuchins in our study project in that. But I just love that book because it's little short kind of vignettes or little short stories that really articulate well what it's like to do primatology from a variety of different perspectives.
What a great recommendation.
Thanks. One of my favorites.
Second question, what are you reading for work right now?
Oh, do you really want to know?
Always.
I am reading about different methods for GCMS, which is gas chromatography mass spectrometry, for understanding and studying urinary odor.
Interesting.
You could say that. I'm not a chemist, so it's taking me a while to get through them.
That's so interesting. So would you do that in the field?
Yeah, so we have done a little bit. We've done a pilot study. So I'm working on a project right now. I'm proposing it to the National Science Foundation um, to study the role of odor communication in male dominance, because we have two different. This goes back to the keystone. I don't know how much detail you want at this part in the interview, but
Go ahead.
our alpha males get big. They get big and bulky, and anybody could walk into a group and say that's the alpha male. But we used to think it was just they were alpha because they were big and bulky, but it's not. They get big and bulky when they become alpha male. And so we're trying to figure out what the trigger is for this bulking up. And we see this happen in orangutans as well, and mandrills, where you almost have two types of males. They're very distinctive. So yeah, we're trying to analyze odor, urinary odor, to see if that's part of that mechanism that's turning that switch on to become a big, bulky alpha male.
That is so interesting. When I was still studying anthropology, I was really interested in endocrinology, and this is really exciting. I'm definitely gonna read up on this later. And then my third and final question: what are you consuming for fun right now? That can be books, podcasts, movies, TV shows, whatever it is that you use to entertain yourself.
Oh my. Well, right this minute, like this week or prior to this week. So this week I'm spending a lot of time bike riding with my children, and I am actually listening to Franz de Waal's book on my phone when I'm walking my dogs, and it is that are we smart enough to understand what animals think? And I'm loving it. So
another great recommendation. I also really like that book. Well, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. Is there anything that you didn't get to say that you wish that you could say?
Maybe the fact that our research in Santa Rosa is very collaborative. So we have 3 co-directors. It's myself, Linda Fedigan, and Amanda Moline. And we have just the most wonderful collaboration. And without that, and without many of the other collaborators we have, graduate students, former graduate students who are now professors at universities, we can do what we do, because it really does take a huge team of people to study and understand the lives of wild species.
That's really nice. I feel like that's not something that we've talked a lot about on this show, is how much teamwork can be involved in the sciences.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very, very much for joining me. I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you. You too. Take care.
Thanks for joining me for this episode of the Anthrobiology Podcast. If you have questions or comments, you can reach me at gabby.lapera@anthrobiology.com. That's spelled GABY.LAPERA@anthrobiology.com. This show is produced by me. Music courtesy of Chad Crouch, aka Poddington Bear at Sound of Picture.